everyone, good morning and welcome back to Sports Today. We bring you this video every single morning to help you catch up with things that you might have missed out on whilst you were catching up on some all important sleep. So without any further ado, let's get straight to it. And well, there has been a lot of controversy around the Eden Gardens pitch that was used in the first India-South Africa test match. And whilst everyone has had their say on it, one person who's surprisingly not said that much is pitch curator Sujan Mukherjee. Now I say surprisingly because normally he's quite a vocal person and has been known to make his points to anyone who's willing to interview him, and now he has actually spoken out and responded to criticism of the pitch. First off, he said that I don't like criticism of me because I know how it is to prepare a pitch. In this case, I was just doing as instructed, and that is the key part really. Once again, pretty much confirming what we already knew, this time from a different source, that the Indian team basically asked for the pitch to be changed and that he was looking to make a very different kind of pitch, one that would have been more sporting, one that would have been more in line with what the traditional Indian pitch perhaps looks like. Instead, he was instructed to make it different, and that is why you ended up getting what was essentially a Frankenstein's monster kind of a pitch. There was some turn, there was uneven bounce, and absolutely no one was happy with it. Well, probably except for the South African team, who tended to adapt much better, but also should be grateful for the fact that the Indian batters absolutely self-destructed. Which brings me to point number 2, or news point number 2. Ashwin has questioned whether or not the Indian batters are good enough to play spin. In fact, he's outrightly gone and said that right now Indian batters are no longer the best players of spin, saying nowadays the Western teams tend to come much better prepared for the challenge, and our own batters are now much better at actually playing on faster wickets. Obviously, what that is a consequence of is, well, the fact that you have made more of a focus recently on white ball cricket. In white ball cricket, pitches are much faster and flatter, which means that you've become much better at playing in those conditions. You don't often play in spinning conditions. Even at home, you've got lottery pitches which really do nothing for your skill overall. So that's perhaps the reason why that is in fact the case. And news point number 3, and this one revolves around Shubman Gill. Well, for anyone wondering what his test status may be for the second test match, the first day of practice at Guwahati and Gill was nowhere to be seen. Now that shouldn't really be much of a surprise, given that if you've been following our updates on Gill, is that he was given a prescribed 48 hours of rest, which would of course include these next couple of days. So 48 hours of rest meant it was always unlikely that he was going to be playing or even practicing. But what it also means is something I've been saying for quite a while: you're not going to be seeing him play the second test. I have no idea why they are being so guarded about it, because a basic Google search tells you that the injury he suffered from takes at least a week or 2 to recover from. So there's no way he's playing this particular test match, and you're just seeing more and more signs of it. And a more bizarre, let's say, bit of news, and this is news point number 4. Due to Gill's potential absence, India is set to recall one particular member into the test squad, Nitish Kumar Reddy. I don't quite understand what exactly goes on in the thought process of this team sometimes, and this is just one of those instances. You release Nitish Kumar Reddy thinking that you wouldn't be needing to play him in this particular series because his skill set as a batting, pace bowling all-rounder wouldn't really come into effect. But now you're a batter short, so you decide to call back an all-rounder? Make that make sense to me, but that is what news reports are potentially suggesting. One more bit of cricket news, news point number 5, before we move on to the world of sport beyond it. And this one's an interesting one because if you remember, Bangladesh veteran or Bangladesh women's cricket veteran Nigar Sultana Jyoti had recently been accused of beating up juniors in the dressing room. It was a wild accusation which she has now spoken back at, or hit back at, with an even wilder counterclaim, because she said, what do you think, I'm going around hitting juniors or just hitting stumps at random times? Am I Harmanpreet Kaur? Yeesh. Obviously, it's a reference to the time when Harmanpreet did end up battering her own stumps. And what Nigar Sultana has said is that, look, what I do in my private time is a different matter. If I'm in private and if I'm doing something and I get frustrated, that's a different matter, but I have never taken that out on any cricketers. It's, as I said, pretty interesting sort of a defense, and gotten a very not so subtle jibe at someone who has been a little bit of a tormentor of Bangladesh cricket and been a very in your face kind of critic, if you remember Harman's antics during that Bangladesh series a few years prior. Switching focus now to the world of sport beyond, let's start with some football news. Germany beat Slovenia 6 6-0 to seal their FIFA World Cup 2026 qualification. A statement of intent win if there ever was one, but also one that should have been no surprise. This is Germany we're talking about. They were always going to be favorites to qualify, and that is exactly what's happened. Another team who also sealed their qualification, the Netherlands. They beat Lithuania 4-0, and now they have made it through from their particular group, with a side effect, by the way, that Poland, of course the team led by Robert Lewandowski, will have to play the playoffs and make it to the World Cup by winning the two-legged playoff that is set to take place in March. And that, of course, till then, no real international football. And speaking of international football, the Indian football team are also going to be in action on Tuesday when they take on Bangladesh in what is essentially a dead rubber match for the AFC Asian Cup qualifiers. Both teams are seemingly out of contention at this point in time, and it's a stark contrast, by the way, to how the previous match between these two nations was played. If you remember, in this particular AFC Asian Cup qualifier cycle, this was the first match that India played, and the first time they played, there was so much anticipation around it because you had Hamza Chaudhary, the Leicester City midfielder, coming and making his debut for Bangladesh. You had Sunil Chhetri making his comeback to the Indian team. Buzz was absolutely through the roof. This time around, though, there's nothing, no stakes. It's just playing for pride and basically building up to the next cycle. A little bit more news, this time focusing away from football. Tennis stars Yannick Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz are among those who are calling for a return to the traditional Davis Cup format. Now, it comes at a time when obviously the seasons come to an end. There'll be Davis Cup ties. Spain's Alcaraz will in fact be playing for Spain in their upcoming tie. Sinner has pulled out of the Italy team, and what a lot of them are saying, and these are quotes that are doing the round, saying that it's perhaps better if you move back to the older format where you play home and away, because that basically gave a lot of energy in the crowds. If you were playing an away tie, you knew that you were dealing not only with the tennis players but also the hostility of the fans, and if you were playing at home, you knew you had your own hostile fans to back you up. That is something that is missing, in their opinion, from the Davis Cup, and I couldn't really agree more. Last bit of news before we call it quits. Indian boxer Pawan Barthwal shocked Altenbek Nursultan to basically assure himself of a medal in the World Boxing Cup final. Now, why this is a shock result is because the boxer that he beat had actually won a gold medal in the last edition of the World Cup and was seen as one of the favorites for this edition of the World Cup too. So, big win, and India's guaranteed medal tally just continues to rise. At this point, it's just a matter of ascertaining which color the medal will be, but either which way, you're guaranteed a medal. That's it from us, though, on this edition of the Morning Wrap. Thank you guys so much for joining us. As always, if you enjoy our work, please don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, tap the bell icon, follow us also on social media. We're on Instagram, X and Facebook, and stay tuned throughout the day for more such videos from the world of sport.